If you want a case that makes seasoned bushmen shake their heads and police scratch theirs, this is it. A 4-year-old boy disappears from a remote South Australian station without a single footprint, a piece of clothing, or so much as a broken twig pointing the way. And then, in the middle of the search for that boy, a shotgun is brandished at a reporter. You don't see that every day. So the question we need to ask right from the start is this: what's really happening behind the crime scene? Let's begin with what we know. The last confirmed person to see little Gus was his grandmother, Shannon Murray, on the evening of September 27th. She says he was playing in the sand outside the family home at around 5 or so p.m. By 5:30 p.m., when she went to call him inside, he was gone. No sound, no cry, no trail. But what happened the next day, or rather what happened on camera, is just as fascinating because it tells us something about the atmosphere around this family. We've all seen the video by now. A Daily Mail reporter attempting to ask questions at the station gate, and suddenly in comes Josie Murray, the trans grandmother, firing on all cylinders, verbally and, according to footage, physically, brandishing a pump-action shotgun. You hear the reporter say, almost defensively, "I was leaving. I was leaving." And then Josie, "Shut your face and get out. You will have the police on you because you've been warned not to come here." Now here's the curious part. The reporter calmly replies, "I haven't been here." If the reporter was leaving anyway, why escalate the situation? Why introduce a firearm? Why create a conflict where none needed to exist? Then we get to the police response, something that raised eyebrows. South Australian police described the whole thing as a misunderstanding, saying the shotgun wasn't used to threaten anyone, but was being carried because of a snake on the veranda. Now, maybe that's true. The outback is full of snakes, but when you've got video showing the firearm being pointed squarely toward a visitor, it does pose a question. Was this really about a snake or about control of the narrative? Police said there was no intent to threaten. Fine. But whose version of events were they relying on? If the police explanation mirrors exactly what the family said, then fair enough. But that still means the family's account heavily shaped the official version. Is that appropriate? Common? Expected? Or is the police response unusually protective? It makes you wonder, does this family have long-standing relationships in the area? Are there connections, formal or informal, that influence how their actions are interpreted? I'm not saying there are, but I'm saying it's a worthwhile question. Now let's step back to Shannon, the grandmother who last saw Gus. She's only recently appeared in new footage, and she comes across as shy, quiet, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to Josie's dominant presence. It seems Shannon is content to let others take charge. Jess, Gus's mother, is often described as a gifted introvert, and the last family member we haven't seen clearly is Ronnie, the 1-year-old brother, who was apparently at home during the disappearance. So the station is home to 3 adults, 2 women, 1 trans woman, plus the children. What that dynamic looks like day to day, we don't really know. But again, observing the gun incident, one could reasonably form the opinion that Josie tends to lead, and leads decisively. The released photo of Gus looks like it was taken in a structured setting, maybe a play school or daycare room, based on the background and the materials on the table. What we don't know is when that photo was taken. Is it recent? Is it months old? That matters, because knowing how a child looks right now, their hair, size, clothing style, even posture, can make a real difference during a search. What's also unusual is that this is the only photo the public has been given. In most missing child cases, we see several images from different angles, different days, different contexts. Having just one picture limits public awareness and reduces the chances of someone recognizing the child. It's another example of how little verified information has been released in this case, and that in itself raises questions. Now onto the disappearance itself. The outback around that property is a hard, dusty, unforgiving landscape. If a child wandered off, there should be footprints. In this terrain, you leave a mark whether you want to or not. Yet no footprints have been confirmed as Gus's, not around the home, not near the dam, not toward the paddock. Private investigators, volunteers, even farmers watching the case have all echoed a similar thought. How does a barefoot child leave no trace in dust? And what about scent? Trackers, both human and canine, reported nothing conclusive. In a place where odor clings to dry grass and footprints stamp deep into powdery earth, that's unusual. Ken Gamble has expressed concern about the lack of sign. Whether every quote attributed to him is perfect or not, the consensus is real. Seasoned searchers think the environment should have offered clues. So why didn't it? Here's a question worth asking. Is the absence of evidence itself evidence of something? Now, the wandered off into the bush theory is the official one. But let's examine that. Children do wander off. They get curious, they chase noises, they follow animals, they explore. But they don't usually go far, especially as the sun sets. When darkness falls in the bush, the world becomes terrifying to a small child. You can't see. You don't know what's out there. Most kids freeze or call out. So why didn't we hear Gus calling for help? In similar cases, that cry is what saves lives. Why didn't that happen here? Would a boy like Gus, adventurous but shy, have the instinct to call for help? And what about the dogs on the Murray property? Where were they? Did any go with him? In that American case, the dog stayed with the child the whole time. That's typical on a farm. Dogs follow kids. They protect them. So, if Gus wandered, why didn't a dog wander with him? And if a dog did, why didn't searchers find the dog's tracks? Another detail worth considering. Gus was supposedly playing near a sand mound, a construction area with a wheelbarrow and debris below. It looks very much like an active work site. Kids fall, kids hurt themselves. Could he have slipped, hit his head, lost consciousness? Did he end up somewhere out of sight in that cluttered environment? Opinion. I don't believe we've fully explored the immediate area around the home, especially the cluttered or potentially hazardous spots, barns, sheds, gaps under machinery, storage pits, or the quarry-like zone visible in aerial images. If a child were injured close to home, would searchers assume he'd traveled further and overlook the obvious? Then there's the layout of the station, disorganized, sprawling, chaotic. If a small child wandered away, then tried to return, he'd be confronted with silhouettes of buildings in the dark, nothing familiar, no guiding lights, no clear paths. Ask yourself, would a 4-year-old know how to navigate that at dusk? Could fear cause him to hide instead of calling out? Or does the silence suggest something else entirely? This is where opinion enters the picture. Personally, I have trouble believing a healthy 4-year-old traveled far into open land without a footprint, without being heard, without leaving a scent, without the dogs reacting, without being found by an enormous search effort. Could he have walked off briefly, then returned, only to fall or get trapped somewhere between the sheds and equipment? That's one possibility. Could he have been taken? That's another. Could something else entirely have occurred before that 5:30 p.m. check-in? We can't rule it out, so we return to the central puzzle. A boy who vanishes without a trace. A family member that reacts aggressively to media attention. Police who describe a firearm incident as a misunderstanding. A property full of hazards and hiding places, and a timeline with a convenient half-hour gap. In cases like this, it's often not the big clues that matter. It's the little inconsistencies, the reactions, the behaviour, the things that don't fit. Let me know what you think. Are we dealing with a tragic bush accident, a misjudged timeline, or something much more complicated? Thanks for watching Behind the Crime Scene. Your comments help shape the next investigation.